Hello, everyone. My name is Irene Lenz from the University of Santiago, and being in my first year of the doctoral program, the aim of my presentation here is just to provide an overview of my research project, which I tentatively named Inhabiting the Border, Intermediate Liminalities, and the Weird. So my project seeks to explore the phenomenon of intermediality in a particular film, The Lighthouse, directed by Robert Eggers, focusing on how literary references act as meaning constitutional strategies. So basically, I intend to analyze the impact, the influence that literature has had on the production of the film, and to identify and examine the references to different literary works that structured The Lighthouse, both formally and thematically. The focus is placed on the role that intermediate references to specific weird short stories plays in the representation of liminal entities and liminal spaces which reflect ecological or identitarian issues of a current society, such as climate change or movements across the border. My initial hypothesis is that the use of intermediate references in The Lighthouse functions as a vehicle for the construction and enhancement of liminality, which calls into question traditional boundaries between nature and culture, self and other, and most especially between human and non-human animals. Since its inception, cinema has relied on literature. So in the same way that different literary works are influenced by other literary works, thus generating intertextuality, cinematographic works have also been influenced by the literary realm. So intertextuality does not exclusively operate between literary pieces, but also between different media, hence the term intermediality. So intermediality, as we can see, actually already entails a crossing of borders, in this case of media borders. And this idea of the threshold or the in-between equally pervades weird fiction. Ongoing debates highlight the difficulty of categorizing the weird due to its interstitial nature, which seems actually to be the adequate vehicle to formally reflect the protean liminal entities and themes that usually inhabit the mode. To give you an idea of the stories that might be categorized as weird narratives, we have those of H.P. Lovecraft and Algernon Blackwood, or even Edgar Allan Poe if we conceive him as a writer of the proto-weird or as the forefather of this particular mode. In fact, these authors, as I intend to prove, have greatly influenced The Lighthouse, which showcases the enduring relevance of their works nowadays. I've chosen to work with a corpus of weird short stories because, on the one hand, narrowing down the corpus to the short story genre makes it more manageable, and on the other hand, and most importantly, the short story genre has been considered the liminal genre par excellence. As regards The Lighthouse, the film displays a plethora of references to different literary works, especially from the weird tradition, that forefront liminal figurations. And I think it has been quite neglected in academia if compared to other feature films directed by Eggers. What I intend to do first is to establish this literary corpus of weird short stories that have influenced the production of Lighthouse, and I will examine the extent to which these stories articulate liminal subjectivities and states of in-betweenness. I also intend to analyze the intermediate references and strategies employed in the film, focusing on their potential to create innovative figurations of liminality, which contribute to the reformulation of traditional hierarchies and oppositions. And by doing this, I hope to build on existing literature on the weird and contribute to ongoing debates, examining the formal, aesthetic, and diegetic possibilities of the short story genre in general, and of the weird mode in particular, and how in the weird, the liminal appears as an underlying principle through which important negotiations of identity occur. More specifically, I would like to critically examine the liminal representations in the selected works and how they might create plural subjectivities via conflation of the human and the non-human, and I will analyze how this affects the individuality of the human subject, calling for new perspectives that go beyond anthropocentric paradigms that attribute agency only to human animals. I would also argue in favor of categorizing, or rather recategorizing, The Lighthouse as with fiction or with cinema, instead of an example of horror, as has been studied. And I will do this by undertaking a close reading, an analysis of the primary corpus through the lens of intermediate studies and against the backdrop of short story criticism, liminality, and eco-criticism. I intend to unveil the different layers of meaning and symbolism that the film encloses, and that emerge precisely through this putting into relation, this dialogue between the film and specific with short stories written in English. Finally, as I've already hinted at, to pursue these objectives, I think I require an interdisciplinary theoretical framework, which ranges from concepts from the field of anthropology, for example, like liminality, also film studies, and concepts from the field of environmental humanities. So, for example, to analyze the representation of the liminal and its potential to deconstruct seemingly fixed barriers and anthropocentric ideals, I will have as background notions that have paved the way towards the reformulation of the nature-culture divide. For example, we have Timothy Morton's post-anthropocentric epistemological turn. So that would be all. I would like to thank you so much for listening to my talk, and I would gladly welcome any comments or questions.